think a problem a lot of people have with movies these days is their overly long run times. Now, some movies need it, of course, but typically Marvel movies aren't really in that group. If you want a long, well-fleshed-out story, oftentimes shows lend themselves better to that format. For a movie, you want things to be real snappy and efficient. You want to cut out the fluff. Enter Thor Love and Thunder, and at just under 2 hours long, this movie really feels like we needed to spend more time with, everyone and everything. This movie feels a lot like reading the Wikipedia entry for a good movie, and I do not say that to speak ill of Wikipedia, how dare you even suggest that. But this movie just feels so rushed. We jump from scene to scene, from battle to battle, major plot point to major plot point. It's exhilarating while watching, there's almost no downtime and something is always happening on screen to draw your attention. But between a very quick and hasty origin for a menacing and incredible villain, a single scene with a cancer-riddled Jane where Mjolnir calls to her and then instantly she's fighting with thunder powers and the movie references that she's been doing this for at least a little while. About 10 seconds in Omnipotent City, home of all the universe's gods, where Thor and his gang don't immediately get the response to their question they want, so they... Oh, sorry, I must be reading this part wrong here. It says here that they kill as many of the gods' guards as possible, while triumphant battle music plays. And then Thor murders Zeus, the ruler of all the gods. Then they run away with ease while no one even really tries to stop them. That cannot be right. Oh, it is? Yeah, okay, I think this movie needed to flesh things out a little better. Right from the very start, we get an origin for our main villain, Gore, and it's, fine. He's devoted to the gods, even after the death of his daughter. The first god he meets is pretty rude to him, and then he goes, yeah, okay, I'm gonna murder every god who ever got it. And that's about 100% of the development we get for good old Gore. It's too bad there aren't a few large, comprehensive stories where his backstory is a bit more fleshed out that they could have borrowed from. No, I'm kidding. I don't mind that they change his origin at all. The movies are allowed to and often should alter and change certain things from the comics. And with this runtime, they really couldn't develop him anymore, but we'll get into that runtime in a second here. Then we get what I'd consider is maybe the weirdest part of this movie. Historically, Marvel has always done a pretty good job of catching viewers up on what happened leading up to things, or what they might have missed. I love that they don't do it like in some books. Imagine if that game of football and Endgame by Tony Nebula went something like this. Whoa, good shot, Tony Stark, also known as Iron Man. Since losing to Thanos on Titan, I haven't seen a better shot. Why, thank you, Nebula, daughter of Thanos, who... Okay, you get the point. But in this movie, the next scene after Gore's is just Korg telling us everything that's happened to Thor in the last decade plus. I liked it in the trailers, and I even liked it for a little bit here, but it kind of goes on for a long time. I get that not everyone watching this movie will have seen the other Avengers and Thors, but most have, and you are wasting very precious screen time on the smaller demographic of people. Now, a lot of people have been shitting on this movie for the humor, and I actually don't think I hated it quite as much as most. I thought Ragnarok had just as many dumb jokes and undercut tense moments, but I also thought both movies laid off the jokes toward the final third, thankfully. Regardless, I don't think it's the jokes in this movie that upset people. It's not those outright, hey, laugh at this moments with a setup and a punchline. It's just how no character can go more than 3 lines of dialogue without being snarky or smug or goofy or something. Every scene feels so lighthearted and carefree, even when there are kids being kidnapped and a god-butchering maniac on the loose, or a god of gods staring down at you with murderous intent. With this movie's half-assed attempts to create high stakes, a lot of the humor here is incredibly unrealistic, which would certainly be my biggest problem. There's a special type of character that handles stress and fear and loss through humor, and they are an excellent archetype, but they excel when they are not numerous in numbers. Every character can't just be a joke machine. Korg is a lot less funny in this movie because every character is just cracking the same dumb, non-stop one-liners. I know that's always been a Marvel problem, but it just feels cranked up to 11 here. I predicted Valkyrie was going to die at the hands of Gore, so I'm a little bummed my prediction was wrong. But that ending still felt very odd to me. Breaking it up into 2 sections, divided by a 9-second hospital scene that's only purpose was to remove Valkyrie from the story and also add a touch of tension for Thor and Jane, was super weird. Thor wanting to go off immediately and take him on all alone would have been great if he and Gore had established some sort of cool connection or rivalry, but they really have absolutely nothing that resembles that here whatsoever. Gore is just another bad guy for Thor, and although he kills some gods and whatever, he's kind of not even a really big threat. And then he just dies, which, that's just such wasted potential. Christian Bale could have easily made it well known he had zero interest in returning in the future, but using this villain as a one-off is so disappointing because holy hell was Christian Bale ever good in this role. I think I have a hard time saying this particular villain is a top-tier MCU villain because he gets little to no development and his motivations are so shallow and not fleshed out at all. But this is a top-tier performance, no doubt. He very easily steals every scene he's in, sometimes just by using his mannerisms and voice. This man continues to dole out 10 out of 10 performances regardless of any and every other element of the film. Have you picked up on that one big problem yet that I mentioned in the title? I mean, I haven't been trying to hide it. I said it right off the bat. You should have been paying attention better if you still don't know. I just wanted to talk about some other stuff first. And that is that this movie is so goddamn rushed. Every plot point, every character, every arc, every story origin, most individual scenes even. Gore has no development. I said that right from the very start. And yeah, he's the character who pisses me off regarding this the most. His origin is okay on paper, but he goes from an incredibly average, frail guy to murdering gods hourly within a flash. There's a ton of sympathy to be had for his character given his tragic past and everything, but we don't get nearly enough sprinkled in to remotely care about him or think of him as anything other than a gross monster. Maybe it makes that ending a bit more of a surprise, but that was rushed as hell too. He wins, gets to make his wish, is gonna kill all gods, Thor and Jane say don't, and he's like, holy hell, that's a good point. Hey, I know I've been trying to kill you guys and you guys have been trying to kill me, but you'll adopt my resurrected daughter, right? It's really hard to explain without just watching the movie and seeing for yourself, but every scene that needs 6 minutes to breathe and make everything make sense to the audience gets 3. Every character arc that needs 7 scenes only gets 2. Getting from point A to point B is never any harder than just a simple cut, and I know this isn't a movie about the journey by any means, but again, every location and every battle has 0 build-up, so the tension is always incredibly low. Even when Thor and Gore encounter each other, they just instantly start fighting, which is a very cool concept if they had some sort of fun connection that the second they see each other they just go fucking nuts, but it just seems like this movie didn't want to waste 30 seconds of conversation before the fight began, making every confrontation just feel a bit messy. There's absolutely nothing separating Gore and Thor's Rogues Gallery from any other villain he's fought in the last 1,000 years. And the fight choreography is actually really cool. The action is not the problem at all. The action is probably what makes this movie redeemable to a lot of people. And also let me remind you that all this movie is happening while Thor and Jane fall back in love, with almost no chemistry and 0 reason for them to get back together other than Thor hot and to make it extra sad when she dies. Thor has much better chemistry and more development with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, and I actually enjoyed seeing those moments on screen. I thought Jane had a pretty cool first scene as Thor where she's all capable and badass and she's kind of the one to be like, Thor, relax, we'll talk about this later. That was pretty cool. But then after that, they try a fish out of water narrative with her where she's now suddenly awestruck by this new world, and I don't really think it works all that well. It could, on paper again, it's pretty solid. I don't know why it doesn't work. Maybe because it's too rushed, I think? They give her a, oh, he's my first bad guy line, but that goes nowhere. Gore is never even remotely looked at as her villain in the slightest, because he gets no development, she gets no development, nobody gets any development. I did like that flashback scene between them, though, to be fair. We never really had this information on their relationship at breakup, and I thought it was handled well, and although it was just that one scene, it had enough room to breathe and really explain itself. I even liked how they grew apart and what led to their relationship ending. It kind of makes them getting back together make even less sense, though, because nothing's really changed for them. And it's been several years, so it's not like Jane hasn't presumably moved on, seeing as though she's never reached out to him or anything. I think they only got back together because the word love was in the title. But back to our central problem. The Guardians of the Galaxy are rushed out of the story immediately, Valkyrie is rushed out for the final battle, they rush in and out of Omnipotent City, they formulate plans in 2 seconds, they have conversations in 5, nothing is ever really explained all that well, and it's so lighthearted and kind of kiddish that you never really care and never really feel like there are any stakes, which is where the constant flow of jokes and banters really starts to wear on you. This movie just really needed that 30 or 40 more minutes on the runtime and a bit of a break on that light as a feather tone. If this movie for whatever reason was only allowed 120 minutes, then they did an okay job. But there's 0 chance they couldn't get more time. I even heard rumors there's a 4-hour version of this somewhere that Taika Waititi admits had too much fluff, but probably not 2 hours worth. This story and this villain and the romance and the final battle and the locations all have the earmarks of grandiosity, but it's all flair and little substance. Very little substance. Give Gore an extra few minutes before he becomes the God Butcher. Show him butchering gods. Let's learn about his family and how harsh his life was before meeting that god. Make his motivations somewhat known, or at least hinted at. He really has no reason to be killing gods if his goal at the end of the day is to get to eternity and resurrect his daughter, so he's just risking her life by risking his own. If your plan hinges on you being able to make a wish, maybe don't challenge the most powerful beings in the universe so often. You're also making a vendetta list a galaxy long of strong people who are going to try to kill your daughter because you pissed them off so much, which is a big reason why I just think that little twist at the end wasn't all that executed. Though the scene with her and Thor at the end was very cute and charming, I did kind of like that. If you wanted to do the God Bomb idea all along like in the comics and just kill all the gods, well then why the hell did it take Jane and Thor like 7 seconds to convince him otherwise? Gore is not presented to us as someone whose morals and convictions are easily changed, let alone in like 5 goddamn seconds following his triumphant victory when he should be more set in his own arrogant ways than ever. And when does that Gore origin scene actually happen? Right before the Guardians of the Galaxy scene with Thor, or like 1,000 years ago? I don't know, not enough time to explain. 4, well, that's not so much fun to say as Thor Ragnarok, is a decent little film. It continues the trend of Phase 4 that I tried real hard to disagree with, but everything post-Endgame is just feeling real weird and messy. A movie that had 0 business existing, the most ambitious movie ever with a massive final end scene that doesn't seem poised to go anywhere, TV shows that just kinda come and go. I don't know, man. I'm not worried about the future of the MCU, but I do seem to be a little less optimistic with every single new entry. Even the good stuff like Spider-Man and Shang-Chi, I just have no idea what they're gonna do with going forward. I used to really like the standalone, not connected to the larger universe stories, but they can't all be like that. Really, really rushed, way too much humor at the wrong times, and a serious waste of one of the coolest Marvel villains, and a fantastic performance by Christian Bale makes this movie, for me, probably the most underwhelming and disappointing project of all of Phase 4. And it's probably the most disappointing movie in the entire franchise just because of its potential. I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because it wasn't an awful film by any means and I did have some fun with it. It just should have been much, much better. If you like this video and want to know what gore is like in the comics, and you want to hear my thoughts on what I was hoping for and expecting out of gore in both this movie and the MCU, then check out this video here. This movie really liked naming gore Sword, so I do have some hope that this movie will indirectly set up Null for the MCU, which is something I reckon it could do back when I made that video. And who knows, gore is resurrected in the comics, and I have a hard time believing anyone wouldn't want Christian Bale to come back and get the treatment he deserves. Anyways, I guess that ends my Thor rant. I sincerely hope you enjoyed watching, and I really appreciate your support. Until next time.